morning. It is Thursday, August 13th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif meets with embattled President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus amidst deadly attacks in the Syrian capital that claimed the lives of dozens. Having rejected it twice before, Israel's Supreme Court approves the government's controversial anti-infiltration law, but orders 1,200 asylum seekers to be set free. And later on the show, a new archaeological discovery may shed light on the story of ancient Egypt's queen, Nefertiti. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin today in Syria, where a 48-hour ceasefire brokered by Iran and Turkey between rebel groups and pro-regime factions in Syria was extended yesterday by 24 hours to allow much-needed humanitarian aid for residents along Syria's border with Lebanon. The lull in the fighting did not extend to the country's capital, where fierce fighting between rebels and regime forces claimed the lives of more than 40 people. The ceasefire coincided with a visit to Damascus by Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif, who arrived in the country armed with what Tehran is touting as a new plan to resolve the crisis in Syria, which has been dragging on for more than 4 years. Zarif's visit, the first since the signing of the nuclear deal between Iran and world powers, according to Al-Manar. Zarif, who met with Hezbollah's chief Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut on Wednesday, said the agreement provided a historic opportunity for regional corporations to fight extremism and face threats posed by the Zionist entity. Let's first take a look at the following report that breaks down what happens yesterday in Syria and take it from there.
Boosted by positive momentum from the nuclear agreement between Iran and world powers, which was reached last month, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif is now trying to resolve one of the bloodiest conflicts of the region, the Syrian civil war, which has killed more than 250,000 people since March 2011. Zarif is touring the region this week from Beirut to Damascus, meeting the top guns, including Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah. His main objective, promoting his 4-point peace plan proposal, which he wants to offer to the United Nations to end Syria's grinding civil war.
We believe solving the nuclear issue established a solid ground for more cooperation between the countries of the region, the Islamic countries in this region. Internal conflicts, sectarianism and extremism are considered among the biggest challenges in the region, and we can't overcome these challenges without more cooperation between countries in the region.
While the details of the Iranian proposal are not yet official, reports indicate it would include a ceasefire and a national unity government for about 5 years, a framework which could potentially strengthen Tehran's ally, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Yet in the meantime, reality stinks. Heavy rebel shelling, followed by government airstrikes around the Syrian capital, killed at least 50 people and wounded scores more. A possible rebel signal to Zarif that he's not so welcome. Will the new power paradigm of the boiling Middle East and the opportunities it carries for cooperation, from Ankara through Beirut to Riyadh and Tehran, be enough to resolve the region's gory conflicts? When it comes to the ever-evolving reality of the Middle East, no one risks making forecasts.
Joining me in studio is Elizabeth Surkoff, a research fellow at the Forum for Regional Thinking. Good morning to you. Also, Ali Waqid, senior Middle East analyst for I-24 News. Thank you for being here. But I want to go straight first to the UK, where we're joined on the phone from London by former British ambassador to Syria, Mr. Ambassador Robert Ford. Mr. Ford, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's Peter Ford.
I'm sorry.
Robert Ford is a former U.S. ambassador.
Very, 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 very true. How incredibly wrong of me, but I wrote the prompter wrong.
Robert is a good friend. He won't mind.
Mr. Ford, Ambassador Peter Ford, thank you for being with us this morning. I want to ask you, as you're looking at what is going on in Syria, when it comes to the diplomatic attempts over the course of the last, I would say, several days, is Iran, as a diplomatic envoy, the entity to try and solve the war in Syria? From your experience as ambassador to that country, do you think that this is what the country needs?
I don't think there is any chance, frankly, of a negotiated end to the war. There is a chance of having a breather, a pause, a temporary set of ceasefires. We're just seeing 3 local ceasefires in 3 Syrian towns. We can perhaps expect to see more of that brokered by Iran, which of course at the moment wants to make nice with America following the recent concluded nuclear negotiations and before the important vote in Congress. But these factors are temporary, I suspect. And after all, what is there to negotiate? Assad is not going to give up power, and the rebels are not going to give up trying to overthrow him. But what we might see is both sides are tired. Possibly both sides would welcome a breather.
A breather, and in the fighting that we're seeing, Ambassador Peter Ford, if you don't mind staying with us as I open this discussion to the studio. Ali, I actually want to start with you because what we're looking at is, as Ambassador Ford just said, it's the Iranians trying to make good, I'm sure you will agree, on what seems to be a promise to the international community that they're going to try help and solve the situation in Syria. Can this work with Assad staying in power? Because it seems right now that he's not going anywhere.
In the Arab world, they are looking to this visit as part of the understanding between Iran and the international community, which is the P+1, that they are giving up Yemen for their interest in Syria. Iran can play a role. Now the question is whether all the parties in Syria will accept Iran mediation or any other mediation, because we have many players acting in Syria, and there is no unanimity between the different parties. There is no say, even for Saudi Arabia and Qatar, over the Islamic State. And if we are talking about a ceasefire, like we are now discussing in Zabadani, for example, there is no guarantee that the Islamic State will accept the conditions for any ceasefire. The Islamic State that is now being attacked by the Americans, by the Turks, and also by the regime. And this is a main player, a main actor in Syria that can, of course, spoil any arrangement, any understanding. The Iranians are coming first to calm Assad, the talks that they will sacrifice him, because there were many reports in the last days that as part of the Iranian-Russian deal, Assad will be sacrificed. This is the first aim. This is the first goal of the visit. And second thing to say that Iran is still here. Iran is still a major player. There is a small problem. When I talked with people around Assad, they said that Zarif is representing the reformist wing in the Iranian regime. They would rather prefer that Soleimani was in Damascus. They say that the priorities of Zarif and Rouhani are internal priorities, and they are discussing, and they don't totally agree with the foreign policy dictated by Khamenei. So this is the background of this visit.
Of where we're standing. But Elizabeth Serkin, as a research fellow for the Forum for Regional Thinking, when it comes to, there's Assad in one play, but when it comes to all these factions fighting, they also will not accept, I'm asking you, they will not accept Assad staying in power, will they?
No, this is absolutely a non-starter. Yeah. If you look at rebels, if you look at civilians themselves, they will not accept Assad staying in power no matter what. And now there is a growing willingness, I feel, among the support base of the regime to give up Assad, to preserve their community, to ensure they will not be slaughtered. We see growing tiredness from the war. We see growing defections among Alawis, the sect of the president. So I think there is much more willingness on both sides, on civilian side, to agree to a deal that will lead to Assad's departure and eventual kind of regime alteration and change. The problem is that Assad, of course, is not willing to give up power. He has never shown any kind of willingness. Now, the question is whether Iran will compel him to do so. And I think it's, as long as Iran's interests are preserved, meaning weapons can continue flowing into Hezbollah's hands, I think they'll be willing to discuss that.
But when we look at these alliances, and Ambassador Ambassador Ford, I'm actually going back to you because you've spent time in Syria. In many ways, for Assad to survive, that breaks up Syria. Syria no longer exists in many ways. Isn't that the case?
Yes, Assad is more than a figurehead. He's like the keystone of the arch. The place will, or what's left of the Syrian state will fall apart if Assad is taken away. I don't agree with the last speaker that many people on the government side are ready to give up Assad. What would follow him? They may be unhappy about the way the war is dragging on, but I think they know that the alternatives to Assad could be even worse, and it would be very dangerous.
To leave it in his hands. Ali, I'm asking you then, if Assad falls tomorrow, what is the alternative in Syria?
Well, the alternatives are clear, and they are moving between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafists represented by the Islamic State. For the moment, there is no moderate, liberal alternative on the table. Yet, I want to mention that the most dramatic component, in my opinion, that was introduced to all initiatives that we are hearing in the last days is the fact that some parties are ready to discuss the I'm not saying the geographic dismantling of Syria, but at least the ethnic dismantling of Syria. In Zabadani, for example, we are hearing the Revolutionary Guard and Hezbollah demanding to clean the region from Sunni. The security zone of Turkey is also one of its aims is to strengthen the Sunni presence in the region. Of course, we are talking that the region of Latakia will be the Alawite part. And for the first time, we are hearing the regime and supporters of the regime, Hezbollah and Iran, ready to discuss the principle of ethnical understanding, ethnical arrangement in Syria, and whether this is the beginning of a new stage for a geographic understanding in Syria. This is to be followed, because when Hezbollah, that is presenting himself as pan-Islamic organization, is conditioning in his talks with the indirect talks with the Saudis, etc., that Zabadani should be cleaned of any Sunni presence. This means that the ethnical issue that the regime was fighting, he says, I'm not an Alawite regime. I'm a Syrian regime that want to guarantee the full sovereignty and full, complete territorial unity of Syria. And on the table, we are hearing some tactical arrangement here and there based on ethnical understandings. And this can create a new horizon for any arrangement in Syria.
But ethnically speaking, you know, Elizabeth, I'm asking you then, with all these factions, and I don't know if you have sources with, you know, the new Syria that Ali has just described, that sounds, by the way, like Iraq in many ways. It sounds like like what happened in Iraq in 2003. What happens to, you know, who leads the pack when it comes to the anti-Assad regime, and who rises then? You know, doesn't that strengthen Hezbollah? Doesn't that strengthen, you know, certain factions along our borders, along borders in the Middle East that nobody wants there, as Ambassador Ford said?
Well, it really depends on which part of Syria you're talking about, because the country is very, very fragmented. In the north, you see clear Islamist dominance. Right. For example, now the party that is negotiating with the Iranian regime pretty much directly in Turkey is Ahrar al-Sham, which is a group that is Salafi, openly, you know, has kind of very clear misgivings about democracy. Yeah. Whereas in the south of Syria, you see clear dominance of more secular players, more moderate, simply because the borders are different. Turkey allowed everyone inside, and Jordan doesn't allow anyone inside. Yeah. So the result is really that it's very difficult right now to negotiate any kind of a deal to settle the situation in Syria, simply because you have to consider many players who are Syrian, many Syrian rebel factions, and on top of it, you have ISIS, mostly not Syrian, and they are absolutely not willing to compromise on anything. Their whole idea is to keep fighting and keep fighting.
Finally, Ali, I'm wondering with you, because at the end of the day, the umbrella on all of this is Iran stepping in as the player, as the international arena, or as the United States expects it to be post signing that deal. Can they deliver on the Syria front? I mean, can they deliver and make, as you said, all these opponents? What if we're hearing from the Saudis the fact that they will not accept anything other than Assad being?
There is a small problem. They can deliver, but the situation doesn't depend only on the Iranian. There are many many players. The Qataris are sponsoring some organizations. The Saudis are sponsoring. Turkey have a say there. But I want to say, Yael, that in order to understand that there is some diplomatic dynamism that is taking place, we should see what is happening on the ground. On the ground, there is a precipitation. There is an acceleration in the operations, in the fights for the regime in the region of Zabadani and Dar'a near Jordan. But for the rebels, they are accelerating their attacks against Damascus. And Damascus
is seeing most of it, as we saw, dozens killed over,
yeah, absolutely.
And
this show that there is a diplomatic move, and every one of the sides want to improve its position at the eve of maybe a big diplomatic international initiative.
But of course, it's going to keep us busy, that's for sure. As we said, taking a look at the Iranian initiative in Syria, I want to thank my guests in studio, and of course, Ambassador Peter Ford, who is joining us from London in the UK as we move along. Because it is the time to say hello and good morning to Ami Kaufman, who joins me daily to discuss the news we've missed while scanning the headlines. And I'm moving fast just because I want to let everybody know, and the guests that we locked in our studio, that Ami just came back from gazing at the stars.
I did.
2 hours ago in a place called Espermont, and yet he managed to turn around and come here.
Do I look tired?
You look exhausted.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you look exhausted. What are the news?
We are going to start with the Jewish Daily Forward, a very influential New York-based newspaper, which has a very nice exclusive. They sent a reporter, actually the assistant managing editor, Larry Kohler-Esses, who spent 1 week in Iran. He got a very rare visa to visit Iran. And what's interesting is there's what he had to. What's interesting is there's that he had what he heard about, the criticism of Israel and Israeli policies. Now, while he heard a widespread criticism of the Israeli government and its policies toward Palestinians, he also found support among some senior clerics for a two-state solution should the Palestinians support it. Listen to what he had to say. Ordinary Iranians with whom I spoke have no interest at all in attacking Israel. Their concern is with their own sense of isolation and economic struggle. He also said that among some of the senior Ayatollahs and prominent officials, that he meant there was also dissent from the official Iranian line against Israel. And to quote him again, just lastly, no one had anything warm to say about the Jewish state, but pressed as to whether it was Israel's policies or its very existence to which they objected, several were adamant it's Israel's policies.
But that also coming on the heels, I have to say, of the Jerusalem Post, and that's not surprising, coming out yesterday with the headline that Zarif's line, I think, out of Syria was that the biggest enemy of the region is the extremist Jewish state.
Yeah, it's also coming on the heels, by the way, of the last day of Jason Rezaian's trial in Iran. It's very touchy, to send a reporter to Iran when you already have an American reporter that is being incarcerated on charges of espionage. The editor of the Forward, Jane Eisner, said she was very, very tense, and she breathed a sigh of relief when he got back on the plane and got out
and left the country. Yes, and.
The Daily Star is reporting that the Croatian that was captured by ISIS, there's new footage, new images that he was beheaded. Tomislav Stalopak, who worked for a French oil and gas company, he was kidnapped in Cairo. So there's some new pictures that confirm that he has probably been beheaded. Speaking of ISIS, when you think honeymoon, what do you think? Tell me when you think about it. I think people think Hawaii, people think, but this American couple just got married in their very early 20s, decided that they wanted to go to Syria and join ISIS. Let's see a report about it.
Let's take a look.
She's the smart young woman in this high school photo from Homecoming Court, an honor student who competed on the robotics team, seen here graduating high school. And this morning, federal authorities say she's also a homegrown supporter of terror. They say 20-year-old Jalen Young is confessing that she and her new husband were traveling to join ISIS in Syria.
Super smart, super intelligent, always very polite, insightful, thoughtful, not radical in any way.
Undercover agents pretending to be terrorists spent the summer talking with the couple on social media, saying that last month she even praised the murders of 4 U.S. Marines killed by a gunman in Chattanooga. Young and 22-year-old Mohammed Daglala were married June 6th, and according to this federal complaint, were pretending the trip to Syria was their honeymoon. Investigators say at one point the Mississippi State student told them how she plans to help ISIS fighters. I am skilled in math and chemistry and worked at an analytical lab here at my college campus. We learn very fast and would love to help with giving medical aid to the injury. Investigators say he told them, I am willing to fight. I want to be taught what it really means to have that heart in battle. Federal agents say they arrested them with plane tickets in hand, trying to fly from Columbus, Mississippi to Turkey, where authorities say they plan to slip into Syria. They're being held this morning without bond. Both of their families, seen outside federal court, say they're stunned.
No, I want to say that, in many ways, if we were joking, I've been to Columbus. I would want to leave too.
Oh, that's not nice.
Not nice, not nice. But come on, this is.
No, you can clearly see that they're amateurs because they're trying to go through Turkey, and now the route through Turkey is really.
It's tough to go, right?
You need to go through it.
That route is no longer.
But the research to their trip wasn't even.
Yeah, they're in their 20s.
No, but to me, listen. I mean, just to break it apart, because we've seen families, we've seen young people do it from here. It's still mind-boggling that people try to get on planes and go and live and with ISIS. But yes, moving on.
Just quickly,
Islamic State is not going according to your plan. He is still trying to recruit. He's still working on propaganda. He is now established a new cell phone application.
Oh yeah, application is No, they're doing, but listen.
For push notifications on beheadings.
For push notifications, if you're looking, yes, and.
Kos, Greece, horrible thing that it's just getting out of hand there. 2,500 Syrian and Afghan refugees were actually locked in a stadium overnight, and then during the day they were held in the sun. 1,000 of the refugees were trapped inside a playground within the stadium with no access to water or shade, and a further 1,500 were housed in a separate section of the stadium with some protection of the sun. The UN authorities are saying they're just totally out of control there.
It's the pictures that, and I'm glad the pictures that we saw, and we can see those again, that we saw yesterday, that we're seeing this morning from Kos, and that goes straight to the point of the Syria discussion that we had. It's so devastating, because also, as I said yesterday, we saw people that are upset in Kos, the tourists that are upset that their vacation is being ruined, but at the end of the day, thousands of people that really have nowhere to go.
Yeah, Greece is just being totally overwhelmed, not enough clerks to do the paperwork.
And the international community is not dealing with it as well. Yes.
Some sad news from the States. We're going to the States now. Jimmy Carter, former president, 39th president of the United States, has revealed that he has cancer. He recently did some liver surgery, and he said that recent liver surgery revealed that I have cancer that now is in other parts of my body, so it has now spread to other parts of his body. I will be rearranging my schedule, he says, as necessary so I can undergo treatment by physicians at Emory Healthcare, which is in Atlanta. He is 90 years old. He's been a little frail lately, but this apparently shows that it's pretty widespread.
And it's sad, I think, that if you look at the legacy of the man who essentially, is involved in many things in this.
He's become a global statesman, trying to promote peace, and is a really amazing man.
Not only that, but also the presiding president over the Iranian-U.S. mess, and putting it mildly back in the 70s.
Right.
But
79.
Yes, it's a piece of history. Yes.
Hillary Clinton has agreed to provide her private email server to the FBI, which she was reluctant to do before. It's coming at a very pretty delicate stage for her in the campaign. We have a report. Let's see what it says.
Let's take a look.
It's the scandal Hillary Clinton just can't shake. Now, the Democratic presidential candidate is giving the U.S. Justice Department her private email server with a database of work-related messages from her time as U.S. Secretary of State.
I think there's so much confusion around this that I understand why reporters and the public are, asking questions, but the facts are pretty clear. I did not send nor receive anything that was classified at the time.
But it's more than just confusion Clinton is dealing with. The major concern is that she may have used the private account linked to a server in her New York home for exchanges which are traditionally meant to be encrypted by government tools. The scandal brings up a crucial time in Clinton's history in politics, her tenure as Secretary of State during the Benghazi attack in 2012, when Islamic State militants attacked the American diplomatic compound in the Libyan city, killing U.S. Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and 3 others. Opponents of Clinton claim that she did not do enough in her power to protect U.S. officials overseas. It's no wonder Republican presidential candidates are using the email scandal to point to what they see as Clinton's involvement in the Middle Eastern crisis.
ISIS grew while the United States disengaged from the Middle East and ignored the threat. And where was the Secretary of State? Where was Secretary of State Clinton in all of this? Like the president himself, she had opposed the surge, then joined in claiming credit for its success, then stood by as that hard-won victory by American and allied forces was thrown away.
Clinton had already handed over about 30,000 emails she sent and received following months of scrutiny. The FBI recently began examining the classified information contained among Clinton's emails, messages which the U.S. administration considers to be government property.
I'm just surprised that the email saga is still going on.
It's going to keep going on because you know that every month there's going to be a batch of emails released, so all the way up to the Iowa caucus in February.
Right, I forgot.
This is going to be on
batches, which I'm sorry, the ones that have been released thus far, I've seen them. It's
a little parv, as we say, a little weak.
a little weak, and with all due respect. Maybe something will pop up.
But that's not her only problem, as you know. Bernie Sanders, the independent who was running for the Democratic nomination, is a big problem. But I want to tell you what I have a problem with, is trying to tell, does he really have a chance? We look at sites, for example, as this site, 538, run by Nate Silver, very prominent statistician. This is a headline from 2 days ago, and the reason I'm bringing you this is listen to this. He says, the Bernie Sanders surge appears to be over. This is from August 11th. Let's see the next headline from The Hill. A new poll from New Hampshire. Sanders surges ahead of Clinton in New Hampshire. A huge surge. He is leading over Clinton 44 to 37. He might take. Bernie Sanders might take New Hampshire. This is amazing.
Which I mean,
huge,
to the
news.
Americans in the studio, that would be us. New Hampshire, taking New Hampshire is, that would be outstanding. Maybe we're looking at Bernie Sanders versus Trump. That would be an interesting race. Yes, sadly, all the time we have, but I left you something to think about. Thank you, Ami. When we get back, we are going to take a closer look at the Israeli courts that, yet again, Israeli courts, a new ruling by the Israeli High Court has activists fuming on both sides of the asylum seeker debate yet again in Israel. We'll take a closer look. Stay with us. First, the news. Welcome back. It is still Thursday, August 13th, 2015. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News, and thank you for staying with us. Israel's Supreme Court has managed to anger activists on both sides of the debate on asylum seekers by issuing a ruling that overturned a provision of the controversial anti-infiltration law that would have allowed illegal immigrants to be held for up to 20 months without trial, while at the same time upholding the law's constitutional value. It was the third time in 2 years that the judges were presented with a modified version of the law, having deemed it contrary to Israel's basic law in both previous occasions. The law detractors say it is a draconian law and would force people to leave their relative safety in Israel, while its supporters claim it is necessary in order to dissuade more people from coming and ease tensions between mostly African asylum seekers and veteran Israelis living side by side in Tel Aviv's slums. Joining me in studio is attorney Asaf Weitzen, who is the director of the Hotline for Refugees and Migrants Legal Department. Good morning to you.
Morning.
I know. It is definitely a Thursday because I'm losing my words. Before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report and break it down from there.
Partial relief for asylum seekers in Israel. The Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled migrants living in Israel without residency permits can no longer be held for up to 20 months without trial. This is the third time the court has considered petitions by rights groups against the so-called anti-infiltration law, and the first time the court has not immediately overruled it. Nonetheless, the court did decide to uphold most other sections of the controversial law, which allows anyone entering Israel illegally to be held at the Sahronim prison for up to 3 months before being transferred to the Holot Detention Center for up to 20. Now, the 9-justice panel ruled 8-1 that detaining migrants for so long at Holot is a disproportionate amount of time, with court president Miriam Naor stating for the majority that she would be happy to see her country have more compassion. Israel must now amend the law by February and set a shorter maximum detention. In the meantime, the court has limited the length of detention to 12 months, ruling that any migrants imprisoned for a year or longer must be released within 2 weeks. That means some 1,200 asylum seekers out of 1,700 held at Holot will be set free by August 20. Rights groups responded to the ruling, saying the court did not engage in enough thought before ordering thousands of people to be deprived of their liberty. Nearly 50,000 Africans reside in Israel without status. Out of those who have not been detained or returned home, most live in South Tel Aviv, a presence local residents of the neighborhoods continue to protest against. Some of those residents who seek harsher action against the refugees, including compulsory deportation, have taken to social media to voice their opposition, posting memes of the High Court president wearing a Nazi uniform. A few right-wing members of parliament intend to press forward with legislation to override the High Court ruling and crack down even harder on the migrant community.
First, let's go straight to Holot Detention Center in the south of Israel, where we're joined on the phone by Aman Bayan. He's an asylum seeker from Eritrea. Aman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'm sure that everybody in the detention center has heard of the decision that was passed by the courts in Israel yesterday. You yourself, are you looking at the possibility of being released soon?
Really, yeah, I already been here for 1.5 years, but still now I am not sure.
What is going
until I see it happen.
I'm sure that will be the case. Only you'll believe it when you see it. Just once again, and I know I asked you this several times because we've spoken before, the conditions in Holot Detention Center. Can you describe what a day is like there?
It's still the same. We have nothing to do here. It's in the middle of the desert. We are isolated, and we are just still waiting for our freedom here.
How hard was it for you to get into Israel?
It was, for me, it was good when I came to Israel for the last 6 years before I came to Holot. I was been working and helping myself. But after I get myself here in Holot, it's very difficult to me as a refugee. And as an innocent man, I was not been waiting to find myself in this desert for more than 1.5 years.
Aman, if you don't mind staying with us, because we're joined by, as we said, by attorney Asaf Weitzen. Asaf, the decision, first of all, yesterday, what is the feeling of the groups that actually support and try to help the asylum seekers in Israel? Why do you think that it wasn't knocked down this time?
First of all, regarding things, it was bittersweet, I would say. We are extremely happy about the release of so many people,
yeah.
and a man was one of them, and there are so many others that we are escorting for such a long time, and finally they are going to be released. At the same time, we are sad about the thousands that might be summoned to Holot in the next period, and we don't really understand why. Why would they be there?
Yeah.
Why would they cost the Israeli taxpayer such a huge amount of money, while at the same time not really influencing, not the situation, the hard situation in the southern neighborhoods of Tel Aviv, and it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable.
And I'm going to ask you first about the legal procedures, because it's no secret there's a new, since the newly elected government in Israel, which, has a certain agenda when it comes to the asylum seekers, or as they, asylum seekers, as they call them, infiltrators, whatnot. The new Minister of Justice, Ayelet Shaked, is trying to also issue this new initiative, so to speak, where asylum seekers are actually going to be judged or going to be, viewed under criminal law.
Yeah. This is a ridiculous statement. It has been said here, even here in this channel, for years. If you want to put someone to criminal charges, first of all, the state must appoint him an attorney, and he will explain everything about the situation in Eritrea, the situation in Sudan, the fact that he had to come to Israel, and the Refugee Convention specifically states that if someone is a refugee, he cannot be punished by the way he entered the state, even if it was an illegal way. So it's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. And anyway, it is not relevant for the people who have been living here for a long time and nothing happened to them, or no criminal charges were made against them for such a long time.
For such a long time. And Aman Bayan, because you're still with us on the phone, why did you leave Eritrea?
I leave Eritrea. I just escaped from dictatorship. I was been in the army without release for more than 7 years. I had to be released after 1.5 years. So I decided to leave because I didn't get a chance to meet my family. I don't have a future. I was being hopeless and I was being powerless. That's why I leave my country.
Right. And I think that, Asaf, I'm sure that you will agree that that is the situation for most people, for most asylum seekers arriving in Israel. What is the next step for, battling for the cause of these people? What are you guys planning?
So we still need to study the decision of the Supreme Court and see how the state reacts. As we know from the past, the state doesn't take the Supreme Court's decisions as they are.
Right.
Always manipulating them, shifting them, changing them, and eventually creates a worst policy. So we'll have to see how the state reacts before we decide how we proceed, but we have a lot of work ahead of us. We need to see if Cholot is here to stay, as basically the situation seems to be right now. We have to focus on making it a place that human beings can dwell in and live. Regarding the infrastructure, the food, the quality of life there, the ability to maybe walk and find meaning in this deserted place. The second thing we have to see, there are very problematic issues regarding the people who are sent to Cholot.
Why?
Why should you send someone who has been living in Israel for the longest period? Why should you send someone who asked asylum and the state didn't reply for such a long time? Why should you send people who are victims of torture in the Sinai Desert?
Yeah. Speaking of unresponded applications, the state has not replied to how many requests?
To the majority of them.
To the majority.
And the Supreme Court, this is extremely important to say, in the decision, in the constitutional decision, this week, the Supreme Court said that the way Israel treats asylum seekers regarding the percentage of recognition and the time it takes to process the asylum request, says that the state, and one of the judges said loud and clear, the state is acting in bad faith. The state is acting in bad faith, and therefore the state cannot claim they are not refugees and cannot base the decision to send them to Cholot,
right,
because Israel is violating the convention.
And the state has not responded to that yet, obviously. But Aman Bayan, still with us on the phone. I mean, I hope that you will be released soon. As we said, how long have you been there in Cholot, in the detention center?
I was being in Cholot for 1.5 years.
For 1.5 years. Well, we hope for you that you will be released soon, according to this new law, according to the decision of the Supreme Court yesterday in Israel. And Asaf Weitzen, I want to thank you for being here with us. As we said, again, another turn in the tale, and the sad tale that is the asylum seekers' tale in Israel. As we move along. Turning to Egypt, completely different story. A new discovery by a British archaeologist may shed light on one of Egypt's ancient, most celebrated beauties. Dr. Nicholas Reeves, an Egyptologist at the University of Arizona, published a study saying he believes he has found the burial place of Queen Nefertiti, the mother of Tutankhamun, who reigned in the 14th century BC. After analyzing high-resolution scans of the walls of Tutankhamun's grave complex, Reeves said he spotted what appeared to be a secret entrance beneath the plaster that he believes leads to the hidden tomb. Now, the following report by Mandy Kogosowski has the details. We'll break it down from there.
3,300 years after her death, the ancient Egyptian Queen Nefertiti, whose name has become synonymous with beauty, elegance, and power, continues to fascinate the world. Now, a new discovery might shed some additional light on the life and death of the queen, who ruled alongside her pharaoh king Akhenaten and initiated a religious revolution by abandoning traditional polytheism in favor of worshipping Aten, the sun. British archaeologist Dr. Nicholas Reeves believes that he has found the queen's missing burial place, and right under the nose of history, in the tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy king of ancient Egypt, discovered 93 years ago in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. Dr. Reeves spotted what appears to be a secret entrance between the plaster and the walls of the king's burial chamber, which he believes leads to the tomb of Nefertiti. Over 5,000 artifacts were discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun, which helped to resolve many mysteries regarding life in ancient Egypt. Now, perhaps the most fascinating mystery yet is about to be unearthed.
We're joined from Cairo in Egypt by I-24 News contributor Jake Wirtschafter. Jake, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's fun to talk about news that happened 3,500 years ago.
and almost feels the same. I know. But firstly, anybody reacting to this in Egypt? Because I think the Western world must be far more excited. That said, what is the reaction to this, if at all?
Well, look, the whole reason this is happening is because a Spanish team was working on making a replica of the tomb of King Tut. And that was because after 90 years of tourism, so many people have been inside of the tomb that the quality of the frescoes on the wall have been damaged. So because of that, we have this replica being made. And it's because of the replica that Reeves saw the ghost outlines of the tomb that he thinks lead to these other passages where Nefertiti is likely to be buried. Unbelievable.
And if Nefertiti is likely to be buried there, and if indeed, I don't really know how it connects with the fact that, she is Tutankhamun's mother. That's the case, right?
Right. Well, we don't know if Nefertiti was Tut's mom or his stepmom, but what we do know is she's one of the most important queens in Egyptian history. She's the person who actually conducted a religious revolution in Egypt, and she went from a polytheistic system of belief to actually a monotheistic one of believing in one God. Now, it happened to be one sun god, but it was one God. The other thing I would say about this is we have to point out that Nicholas Reeves has kind of a Nefertiti complex. He actually thinks that the death mask, the golden death mask that we all know is the face of King Tut, is in fact Nefertiti's face. Huh. That death mask prepared for Tut is based on basically his mom's death mask, and that he died so.
I think we may have lost Jake Wirtschafter there, which is very sad because I find this to be one of the most exciting stories this morning. But as we said, supposedly, again, a Western archaeologist finds secrets of Egyptians' mythology and Egyptian history, and only time will tell if this is true. That was Jake Wirtschafter with us from Cairo. And of course, and as we can see, that most of these artifacts usually are sitting in Western cities and countries, but that's a completely different story. That said, do stay with us, because coming up, something completely different. The Rocky Horror Picture Show opened this week in 1975. We take a look back at this week in history, all the mayhem and possibly even culture and good things that happened. So stay around. First, as in every morning, the morning headlines. Good morning. It is still August. What date is it?
13th.
13th in 2015, and I am going on vacation.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Amit Kling. I know. I wanted to share
I understand this face so well.
Share with the viewers.
Share with the viewers.
Miss
me. Yeah.
Prepare them for this.
Miss you. Wouldn't want to be here. Just kidding. But, Ami, you're here with the viral spiral that is the world.
Yes. Well, after this horrific news that you're going on vacation, everybody's going to... Let's start with something a little soothing, shall I say, okay? Look at the headline from Time Magazine, from this item. Watch a strangely hypnotic video of thousands of black balls rolling into light. Let's do that. Let's
watch a hypnotic video of thousands of black balls.
Let's do that.
Please. I need to go back.
How do you feel? How do you feel?
I am.
Yeah.
I am having a hard time choosing between True Detective Season 3 and a truck taking a bad dump.
Oh,
okay, nice.
Nice. I'm going with 2.
Like that truck ate something bad.
You're going to go with number 2?
Shall I tell you what this is, by the way?
Yes.
These are shade balls.
Shade balls.
These, California is having a terrible drought. And these are millions of balls, black balls, shade balls, that report into LA's reservoirs, and they prevent evaporation.
Oh, my word.
And it's saving them not only millions of gallons of water, drinking water, it's very cheap. It's a lot cheaper than all the methods that they used before.
Thus far.
It's $250 million cheaper.
I have to say, and I just like saying shade balls.
I am shade ball.
Shade balls.
I am still going with that truck ate some bad Chinese.
Yes, and
okay, I'm going to ask you about this one because you were a reporter on the ground for a long time. A lot of stuff on the ground. Let's see this reporter who was something kind of tricky, something bad happened to her. She's from Australia. Let's take a look at this.
This is field reporting.
This
at
is
its
field
best,
reporting.
supposedly.
A reporter was bitten by something.
Ooh, let's have a look.
Yeah.
A local ranger and I just got bitten by a bull ant. Oh my God. Oh, I'm about to cry.
Okay.
But what?
What was she was?
Oh, okay. So in Australia, they have these things. They're called bull ants. They are huge ants. They're very venomous. They are extremely painful.
Please stop and do not tell me any of this.
No, I just said the first thing that came to mind, and you're too young, is Dingo ate my baby.
Right. That was on Seinfeld. How am I too young?
Dingo ate my baby.
So I was wondering if, what's the most bizarre thing that might have happened to you? Were you ever bitten by something?
Actually, yes. No. I was bitten by something. Well, we don't even know what it was. I had this huge thing come out on my arm in Iraq once. Yes,
and
but
I
was
know what it was.
No, they didn't know, but I was in a military British camp base, and they just gave me a lot of antibiotics. Yeah, and it's just it was It may explain a lot of things. Yes. So, moving on.
Which is why you howl at the moon at
midnight. Yes.
There's a hashtag going around, and it has to do, of course, with Donald Trump. This hashtag, well, it started with his remarks on Megyn Kelly during the GOP debate, where after the debate, he said that, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her whatever, apparently talking about she was during a menstruation, having a period. So women took to Twitter.
Love this.
And the hashtag is called periods are not an insult. And we have a few tweets. I propose that instead of saying that women are on the rag when they have their period, we say on their Trump.
Brilliant.
You know what this reminds me of? The Santorum story.
Yes.
Rick Santorum.
Yeah, Rick Santorum.
And Dan Savage.
When you Googled Santorum, some weird results came out.
Come on.
But we cannot say it here, am I right?
We say it on the air.
Here's another tweet. Can I just show another tweet
that
we have? I'm actively bleeding from the vagina today, but I still got bleep done.
Okay.
Hey, Donald Trump, I'm on day one of my period, and I feel fine. Maybe a little tired. I'll keep you updated. I think this is a great hashtag. I'm going to follow this one.
I think it's phenomenal. I'm joining. Yes.
Speaking about elections, there are elections in Canada, apparently. I did not know that. As a typical American, I know nothing about Canada.
I was about to say, as a typical American, I was about to say, who cares?
But there is a man called, and it's apparently in October. I'm not, I don't know.
No.
There's a man called Wyatt Scott who is running he's a candidate for the parliament in Canada. As usually we see, ads or campaign ads for candidates in the States. Very serious, not talking to the camera. Let's see how Wyatt Scott does his campaign ad.
Wyatt, take it away.
Change is coming to Canada, and I'm here to lead that charge. Are you ready for the shift? I am. My name's Wyatt Scott, and I'm running for Parliament!
Please let him win.
This man is amazing.
Let him win.
Can he run on a joint platform with Rob Ford?
Can he run across from Trump?
Can I just say, I don't care where he stands on the issues. I'm voting for him.
I think he's very strong on anti-robot.
Anti-robot, yeah.
Which is a very important issue.
He's anti-alien invasion.
Yes.
And I think we're not dealing with that.
I don't think are his rivals strong enough on alien invasions?
What are your issues on alien invasions? Yes.
Very sad news.
Please.
Uggy the dog died at the age of 30. And who was Uggy the dog? Did you remember the famous film that came out a few years ago called The Artist, or The Artiste, actually?
Yes.
It was a silent film.
Yes.
Totally silent. And he was basically the star. This dog was the star. I think we have some moments of him from the trailer. It was all in black and white, of course.
Black and white. It won Best Film.
It did? It won Best Film? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, actually, for his appearance, by the way, Uggy's appearance in The Artiste earned him a number of accolades, including the Golden Collar Award and the Palm Dog Award at Cannes. So he was Uggy is no longer with us at the age of 13.
Devastation. Yeah. Yes. But he had a good run.
He did have a good run.
Yes. And
Tinder.
I think that, I'm sorry, it rendered Kling speechless. I'm
very sad.
I've never seen that happen before.
Tinder.
Yes.
Last week, Vanity Fair ran a really big feature story by the journalist Nancy Jo Sales. It was called Tinder and the Dawn of the Dating Apocalypse, saying how Tinder is ruining the dating scene. It's all about hooking up, and it's ruining love, and it's ruining marriage. And the Tinder PR person went on a tweet. He just had a meltdown. Yes. He posted 30 tweets as a result, in response to this, in about less than an hour. 30 tweets, just total meltdown. Let's see just a few of the tweets. Some of them were kind of childish. Little known fact, sex was invented in 2012 when Tinder was launched. It's disappointing that Vanity Fair thought that my tiny number of people you found for your article represent our entire global user base.
I find it fascinating that your impersonation of a flamboyant PR person very much reminds me of somebody who used to be on this show.
Okay. Yes.
We'll send that to him. Mm-hmm. Another clip. Another tweet. Next time, reach out to us first, Nancy Jo Sales. That's what journalists typically do. The Tinder generation is real. Our users are creating it, but it's not at all what you portray it to be. And it goes on and on and on. This man went over 30 tweets.
Okay, boo-hoo.
I don't know, do we have time for more?
Yes, one more.
Okay, some rare pictures coming out from Britain of Princess Diana and Prince Charles' wedding. 750 million watched that 34 years ago, but no one saw pictures from behind the scenes. There was only one photographer that was taking pictures from behind the scenes, and these are going to be auctioned very soon. It was taken by a guy called Lord Patrick Litchfield, a well-known British photographer, and it shows some really nice stuff. He was the only guy behind the scenes. This is the Queen watching television of all the throngs of people that came to see the wedding outside of the palace.
Look at that, but not only that, look at that pomp and circumstance, especially in wake of the fact that we know what happened in that marriage.
Exactly.
That we know how it ended. But
and Diana's death, of course.
No, and it's fascinating to me, though, that we, in the 21st century, and all this was tragic for Diana and whatnot, are still fascinated by these people.
Yes. And
I'm sorry.
Apparently these pictures are going to get a lot of money in this auction.
A lot of money, but, there we have it. Ami, you're locked in studio because it is the time that we wait for the entire week. We're sitting here saying we need...
I've been waiting for this.
The Kling Master, Amit Kling, culture editor of Time Out magazine. Take it away.
All right, so...
This week in history.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
1888, August 8th.
Right.
This is the whole August 8th is going to be very difficult for pronounce, but serious now. This is a date that absolutely changed the way we listen to music, because this is the day that Thomas Edison introduced the phonograph. Wow. Now, I think it's there
not
are...
only that, we're sitting here because of this man.
Yes.
In many ways.
Yes, but let's focus on the phonograph for a minute. I mean, it sometimes baffles me. There's a lot of debate in recent years going on about the death of the album and what it means for music. And very few people stop to think about the fact that recorded music is a speck of dust on the sleeve of the history of music in general. We have not had recorded music for even 150 years.
Right.
Up to that moment, just think, all we had was local musicians' sheet books. And touring composers, touring bands, touring musicians that were, word of mouth, and you went and you had no idea what you were going into.
Their lyrics because there was no way to memorize it.
Exactly. But this is the beginning of recorded music.
Okay.
So this
I think it's a very, very important moment in history, and I'm glad you brought it to our attention.
It's critical.
I'm a second before vacation, don't mind me. Moving along.
What is your problem? My God, I should have asked it on so many occasions. Okay, this is for you, I'll bet. August 12, 1961 is the day they started building the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
Yes. Separation, of course, was way before that, but these journeys
began.
The
separation was at 1960. The
yes,
Berlin
but
Wall.
this is.
And then 1989 it comes down. Yeah,
yes.
89 I was there, by the way, for the coming down.
Of course you were.
Of course I was.
You were seriously like the Forrest Gump of journalism.
I was there in the South.
Run, Yael, run.
Okay.
Yael in places. I'm going to have you photoshopped into every story I'm going to bring from now on.
Then Photoshop me into
but seriously, just think, this is really, there you have it. This is less than 30 years that this thing stands.
Less than 30 years, I think, is the important line here, because in the span of time that history is, we saw the fall of a regime, the fall of an ideology, the fall of whatnot. And it's amazing. It's amazing that it happened in such a short time. Sally, it doesn't take that quick in the Middle East.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm also have to say I'm very amused by, I just was in Berlin earlier this year, and what remained of it they covered.
They covered.
So of course the reason official is that you need to pay to see the remains
of the Berlin Wall.
But it's interesting to me that it's hidden from public eye, hidden from the view.
We would like to,
There's something. There's more than. I think there's more to it than just.
I know, or we
wish
can
of money.
say it's very German.
No, you have to say it's very German.
It is very, it is very German. Okay, moving along.
Okay. Now this is dark yet interesting. 1969, August 9th is the day of the Sharon Tate murders of Charles Manson. This is the most, I think, emblematic serial killer of the 20th century. He's to the 20th century what Jack the Ripper was to the 19th century.
So. And I think we have a little report about this. Let's have a look.
The man who most terrorized Hollywood. People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are.
Yes, he's so much of a textbook psychopath. I think that to a degree, Manson, a very image-conscious person, also plays the psychopath to a certain level.
No, it plays it all the way. I mean, listen,
he's both. He's both.
Given the background of this man, who I think spent it mostly in orphanages and foster homes and whatnot.
Of course, he's completely demented.
No, demented. But the textual thing about this that's interesting that is his followers, the female followers of Manson. To me, that was always fascinating. Affluent, white, American, waspy women that went on the spree with him.
Of course, a sort of brand of Stockholm Syndrome has part in it.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
No, but
I mean, otherwise, why would you be sitting here?
Exactly. But about Manson, one thing I think part of his behavior is that he's also very interested in terrorizing the public. Through such public behavior.
And I'm almost going to bring it back to ISIS and say people are attracted, the people that we see from the West who are flying
same
around.
principle.
Same agenda. But, finally, yes.
Let's end this on a nice note. 1975, August 14th, is the premiere of the longest-running film in history, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, that went on the screen in 1975.
75. Wow.
40 years. 40. It's still on.
Yeah,
it's still running.
It's still on.
People go see it in throngs. Yeah,
they see it in throngs. It was shown. I'll tell you what. In the Middle East, in a little city called Tel Aviv, it was shown in a film theater called the Paris Film Theater. I don't know if you remember it.
I don't actually. No.
You don't. You weren't living here. Right, exactly. It was the Paris Film Theater where you could smoke in that theater.
That sounds nice.
That sounds nice. And you went at midnight. And my parents took me when I was 7 years old.
That's adorable. Wow. But an interesting fact, I think, about the Rocky Horror Picture Show is, it's a very sexually charged musical, and its followers, the midnight screenings, is very much about sexual bonding and crossing borders.
We have to show people what we're talking about. Please, let's.
You've seen all kinds of movies, but you've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
See the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes, but without spoiling the ending for the few who should rush to see it, it also satirizes, I think, hippie norms of sexual love, and it shows how the utopia of free love is impossible. It ends on a somewhat tragic note.
We're going to have to leave you guys with that. The utopia of free love, folks, is impossible. Give it up, but tune in tomorrow morning to another edition of the morning edition, the place to start your day on I-24 News, and stay here for the rest of the day. And do you remember the songs from Rocky Horror Picture Show? Which one? First when it all began, I was a regular Frankie fan.